Yeah, we live.
Okay, so we determined from our contact sheet what we're going to do print-wise. I am going to get this set up in the light, and then we'll, just so you can see, and then we'll proceed to make the print. So I'm done with my contact printer. I can get rid of this. And we're going to switch to easel. I want to make sure this opens in front for us, not have this pointing to the back, because that just makes it more challenging to work with. And I'm going to find my negative that I want to print. Holding it by the edge, I'm going to pull it out of here. So I've got my negative here. I've got this cloth. You can use a negative brush with, it's got a little puff in air, or you can also use this. This is gently to wipe off any kind of dust that may be clinging to your negative. This is also got an anti-static charge, so any kind of a static electricity will not suck dust back onto the negative. But we do want to keep it in the sealed bag. I'm now going to get my negative carrier. Again, this rim goes towards the bottom. This just opens up like this. And I'm going to line up my negative in here. Whoop. Avoiding that. And then I kind of pull this up to the light. Maybe you can see it from that angle, Sean, and get that centered. This is the carrier that had the filed edges, so I really want to make sure that's even and looking good for me before I put that in the enlarger. So sometimes it's just a little bit of nudging to get it in place. The other one, you don't have to do all what I'm doing now. I just want to show you how to put the cool edges on. So then that goes into your enlarger here. And now we're going to just take a look. I'm going to turn off and put our safe lights back on and take a look at this. I'll turn my timer to focus. We see our print's coming through there. It's not super bright. I'm going to turn it up just so we can see it for right now. And now I'm going to make some adjustments to fill. I like a full frame image. I like to see the entire picture. Some people like to crop their images and would roll this up like that. But I prefer the full frame myself. And I am going to nudge a little bit. You don't want to nudge a lot when you're in the negative carrier like this, but you can make some little adjustments. Make sure our edges look nice. All right. This is our focal length, and I'm just double checking it on this to make sure it's correct, and it is. What I look for is sometimes you'll see, and I'll do it really extremely, sort of a fogging or a weird vignetting on the edge. I think it happens more if you pull it down. So we just want to adjust that so that we're getting an even flow of light through the whole print. This you usually should not have to touch. It should be set, but sometimes, you know, there's a couple of different cranks on this thing. Sometimes somebody will accidentally grab this top one. But now I'm going to get this in focus. And so my first step on that is just to get it visually focused. Like, see where it looks sharpest to me. I can read the Yashica on my little box camera there. And now I'm going to use this focus aid. This will be hard to demonstrate on video, but you can see a picture of grain in the example. All right, my grain is focused. I don't know, can you shoot down there and see it?
No, let's try.
There it is. All right. All that film grain you can see down there is actually in focus. And it'll look blurry. You won't see the edges of the grain if it's not focused. I'm going to take this back down to where we had it. Got it on F8 or F11. Let's stick with F8. F8's a good sort of middle of the road choice for your aperture. But basically, let's talk about negative density before I do this again. Some negatives are lighter and don't have as much silver particulate embedded in them, in which case you're going to need much less light than you would on an average. This is a pretty average negative. Some negatives have a lot of very dense negative, have a lot of silver particulate. Usually those are overexposed, but you can still pull a print out of an overexposed negative. You just need to add more light in the enlarger by adjusting your aperture and or the time that you're doing that. So with our average negative though, I'm going to go ahead and dial this back down to 2. And we're going to do a test strip again. What I'm going to put my test strip is sort of horizontally across here because I want to get a little bit of information from all my areas of exposure on the negative. So I'll be a little bit creative with how I place this. I like big ones, so hopefully if there's anything I can impart is don't be stingy on your test strips. All right, so we're doing the same thing we did with the other one. We are given a couple little bops of light and moving this cardboard over. All right, 10 seconds. If you've got a very dense negative, you might want to do 3-second or 4-second increments. That's really going to be based on your experience as you're working in the darkroom and getting to know how things work. Same process, 2 minutes of development time. Go, you can see the nice tea bag and the reflections in the water there. Pretty fun. You know, again, we're going from lightest to darkest, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 8 and 10 are way too dark. We can see we've lost a lot of definition in that camera. But right through here, I think, what is that, 2, 4, about 6 seconds. Looks pretty good. We've got nice reflection on the coffee. We've got a true black, which we always want to have a true black with our prints. And I think that looks pretty good, actually. So I'm going to go for 6-second exposure on this and see what we've got. Now, the first print you make is considered your work print. You may have to make other adjustments to it, but we're going to just try it right now as 6 seconds. But at some point, there may be need to dodge and burn, add a filter. Those are all things you can determine after you've made your first working print. All right, we're ready to make our print now. I'm going to line this up by gently touching the edges. There's some little stops here that I want to get my paper lined up with, and put this down. Make sure these clips aren't in the way and interfering with how this hits the edge. And then I said, I think 6 seconds, so let's dial this on up to 6. And we're going to expose for 6 seconds. Now that may be too much for my camera. What we saw in the test strip, that was fast, 6 seconds. What we saw in the test strip was really the T area, so I may need to adjust from there, but let's take a look. You can see those fun edges now too, where that negative carrier was filed out. Gives it a nice look. And again, I will put this reminder because I see so many people do it. Don't jab with your tongs. You're just really handling by the edges with this and draining off excess chemical. Stop that. Now you can use the acetic acid based stop bath, and what we have here at Spalding is an indicator stop bath. So when this goes bad, it'll turn purple and you just know to discard it. It can go down the drain and be rinsed, diluted down the drain. With water though, every 10 or so prints, you're going to want to change this out and just make sure it stays fresh. So we've only really done, a couple prints and a couple test strips, so it's fine still. Same with your fixer. You don't discard it, but you do test it. All right, so this fixer will eventually go bad. It will reach a point where it is saturated. It's washing away all the silver that wasn't exposed and firming up and solidifying this image. At some point, this will get saturated with too much heavy metal, too much silver will be in there. So we would use a hypo check, which is this little bottle. You'd scoop a little bit off on a tiny beaker, put a drop or two of this. If a milky white precipitate forms on top, your fixer is bad and it's time to recycle it. This never, ever, ever goes down the drain. This will poison the groundwater, and we want to keep the earth as healthy a place as we can. So it's definitely important to pour off bad fixer into a container to take it for recycling, or into a silver recovery unit if you have access to such a thing. And we really, again, just want to drain this off very well. And again, I kind of tap it on the edge here to encourage a little more. Shake it, do whatever. As long as you're holding it by the edge, it should be good. Now we can go into our 10-minute rinse. But what's happened here is this first contact sheets, also we're going to start our time over now. So that's a full 10 minutes. And again, I usually just leave this going with 7 to 10 prints in here, and then when I'm done in the darkroom or finish washing from the time the last print goes in, then you're good and you can take it out and dry it. All right, so we see our print here, and it's actually not bad. I think there's a little bit, it could be a little sharper here. I may have hit the focus when I was doing that, but we're pretty good in terms of the balance between light and dark. You might want to dodge that. Dodge would be during my development, I'd cover this with a small piece of paper, keep it moving, or something to block the light, just for about a second, I think, and give that slightly different so the rest of the exposure is correct. But let's talk about testing. I'm not sure fixer is bad yet, so we might not see anything, but you're going to scoop up a little bit and do a couple little drops. Now, this fixer is still good, but if it had gone bad and reached a point of saturation, a milky white precipitate will form where the drops hit the fixer. So you'd see something that really looks like milk, literally. More like almond milk, maybe a little translucent, but it definitely, it's a very clear change. And I'm sorry that our fixer is not bad, that we can't demonstrate that. But that's good, because our fixer is not bad. It means our print will last as long as we take care of it. At a very basic level, this is print development in a black and white darkroom. These are lovely silver prints, known as gelatin silver prints. You can get various types of papers. You can get different chemicals that do slightly different things when you develop. In other words, develop more cool tones or warm tones on your prints. You can take a print like this after you're done rinsing and fixing and tone it with a sepia toner, a blue toner. There's a lot of different options for finishing the print. There are also some really cool things you can do in the darkroom with sandwich negatives, solarization. Really, this is just the beginning. So I hope you find that you love photography and want to keep exploring the different processes and options that you can do with darkroom printing. And one of the last thing I'll leave you with is cleanup. Cleanup is incredibly important. We want to make sure everything stays in the correct order, as well as get everything rinsed off. The fixer particularly can become poisonous to the groundwater, as I mentioned, so that's the first thing I'm going to do, is take the fixer and dump it off into a container. So, and sometimes there's some funnels, but I think I can get it with this, but you might want a funnel. So this is bad fixer, we're getting rid of it. If your fixer's not bad, it can go into a stock jug and be reused. Our stop bath and developer can go down the drain. And then we just want to make sure everything is washed really well and the sink gets squeegeed to account as our prints are finishing up here. I'm actually going to just leave those here and get it over here. We'll rinse everything up and put it away to dry. That includes our beakers, everything we've used. So getting a really good rinse in these, making sure we get edges, bottoms, and and then they can just be inverted to dry. Again, just getting the whole tray rinsed off. My mother always said when I was learning to do dishes as a kid, she was like, don't forget to wash the bottom of the pan. Don't forget to wash the bottom of the tray. Awesome. Thank you. These have a little tub, don't they?
Yes.
So how I usually dry these when they're wet is just kind of stick them up so they can drain down. They also, if you come in and they're apart, you just stick them back in. They're just little bamboo pieces. Make sure we do the same thing. Even though I rinsed this beaker while we were setting up, we want to make sure it's really cleaned out. And I actually am putting my finger over this to give it a little pressure since this is a beaker and things like to hide in little crevices. So. It may seem like overkill, but really we don't want any traces of chemicals left in any of our equipment. So, once our beakers and trays are clean, we now want to address the sink. I've still got some prints rinsing here. It hasn't been 10 minutes, so we're just going to squeegee. You wouldn't have to do this in every darkroom sink, but it's always good to give it a good rinse with water and squeegee any excess chemicals towards the drain, just to make sure we're not leaving standing chemistry in a sink. So good, I'm utilizing the water from my front bath and giving it a good solid rinse. Don't forget your edges of your sink either. There's how you do it.
Right. You were saying earlier about wearing an apron.
Yes, I wear an apron in the darkroom because both your developers, or all three, your developer stop bath fixer can stain your clothes. Your developer can leave brown spots on your clothing. The stop bath is acetic acid, so it can bleach, as can the fixer, can bleach your clothing. So if you wear something you love into the darkroom, you know, wear an apron, a smock, something to keep your clothes, or just wear clothes you don't care about in the darkroom. And make sure you wash them and your hands with soap and water when you're done. And remember, when you're done printing for the day, dry hands, you never want to handle negatives with damp hands. But you want to make sure, I find a lot of negatives in enlargers because people get done with their print and forget about it. So we want to definitely file that back away to our negative sleeve here. There we go. And then I'm going to just put all our equipment back. We've got Station 5. I borrowed some carriers from other enlargers. Don't forget to turn off your timer. And there you go. Last thing we're going to do is get our prints ready to dry. Face down against our board. We're going to squeegee off. Ooh, that was a great sound. Excess water. Put them face up to dry on the screen, or you can hang them from a line either way to dry. If you're doing fiber-based paper, it's best to do face down actually on a screen. And why is that? Because it curls towards the emulsion, and fiber-based paper gets very curly, so we would, if this were fiber-based, do it face down. Last thing, we're going to put some beakers to dry in the sink here. We'll just keep everything tidy. The tidier it is, the happier you'll be when you come in to use the darkroom again.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks. It's been great. And please feel free, if you have questions for me, I'm available. My website is www.vividblack.net. You can also reach me through Spalding.